So for the beginning of the conversation, I like to ask, how are you, considering the fact that we are living in pandemia for more than a year, and you are in Australia now, if I'm not wrong, right?
Yes, I am. So back in Sydney, Australia. I've been here after finishing off qualifiers in Cameroon. I flew back to Kenya and then came back to Australia. So a lot of traveling over the last couple of months, but enjoying being home. And like you mentioned, it's been a tough year with COVID, but it's been a good opportunity to work on some personal growth as well as professional growth. And it's time that usually us coaches wouldn't get off, so it was important to take advantage of that.
So is it hard to travel a lot in these circumstances?
Definitely. So with Australia, you actually have to apply to leave the country, and you can only leave if it's for an emergency or business purposes. So it's a whole process to leave, and then it was a 41-hour flight to get to Kenya. So a lot of stopovers and waiting, and then getting into Kenya, you have to do the usual COVID screening, etc. And then on the way home, 41 hours again, and 2 weeks worth of quarantine. So in a hotel, which was mandatory. So I'm not exactly inching to get back to travel. So hopefully by Afrobasket in August, it won't be that hard.
So here in Serbia, we know something about you, but we don't know everything. We know that you are female head coach of the national team of Kenya, and that you will go with the Kenya national team to Afrobasket. But I would like to start with one sentence that you heard from the official, if I'm right, and it's, "No, this is for the head coach." What can you tell us about that situation?
So when I arrived for our first game against Senegal in Yaoundé, Cameroon, obviously we'd been practicing with the team, but we hadn't seen a lot of officials from Cameroon who were the hosts. When I went up to put my whiteboard on the head coaching chair and put my bag underneath, I had an official come up to me and said, no, this is for the head coach. And I had to tell her that actually I was the head coach. And then she said, no, and pointed at my assistant, he's the head coach. And I was like, no, it's me. And so that shock look on her face, and then she apologized, but it was a good opportunity to change someone's mindset and to be like, yes, there are female head coaches working with men's teams.
What was your first reaction in that situation, and are Africans now get used to you?
Oh, definitely. Look, with that situation, I'm used to it. If I haven't been to that country before, obviously it's a bit of a shock for a lot of people to see me walk in with my team. But I've now been in Africa for 10 years, and that's happening less and less. I've built up a reputation. So now, actually, if I'm not at a tournament, people are like, oh, where's Coach Liz? So I've definitely been embraced by Africa, and I'm really proud that Kenya is the first national team to ever have a female head coach, and it defies expectations because people have a lot of backward ideas regarding Africa, and so I'm happy that it happened there, that they were the first to do this.
Okay, we will talk more about the road to the Afrobasket, but first I want to know, how did you start your coaching career?
So growing up in Australia, where sport is a bit of a religion for us, and I played multiple sports growing up, and when I was 10 years old, I stumbled across the Women's National Basketball League here. And at the time, we had great athletes in terms of Lauren Jackson, Penny Taylor, Michelle Timms, Sandy Brondello, and we had some really powerful female head coaches in that league. And I think that's what inspired me to start playing basketball at 15. And I had previously coached other sports, so it seemed natural to start coaching basketball at 16. But I would say that without having those visible female head coaches of the WNBL, I probably wouldn't have considered coaching as a career. And so I'm always thankful that I had those visible role models to inspire me.
So can you imagine yourself on the bench of some women team?
Oh, of course. You know, early on in my career, I coached boys and girls and women's teams. It wasn't until 2011 when I went to Africa that I started coaching men's teams. Right now, I want to continue working in that area or sphere with men's teams and continue to push the boundaries and be a role model in that space. But I think, you know, in the future, I definitely will come back and work with women's teams.
So when you started to work as a coach, assistant or a head coach, it doesn't really matter. Did you imagine yourself at the bench of the men's national team?
Oh, definitely. I've always been fairly lucky in that I've spent a lot of time as a head coach. I've only ever been an assistant coach when federations feel like they need a national from that country. So back in 2012, I went to my first FIBA Africa Zone 6 Club Championships, and I got to see powerhouse clubs like Petro and Augusto from Angola. And that inspired me to stay in Africa and continue coaching. And it was then that I said, I want to be the first female to lead a men's team at AfroBasket. It took me 9 years, but I'm glad I'm going to be achieving that come August.
What was the most interesting thing in that journey for 9 years?
I think the most interesting thing would definitely be the players I've worked with, the friendships I've developed, the people I've met, learning about the different cultures. There's 54 countries in Africa. It's very much like Europe. It's very diverse, different histories and different cultures. And so that has been the most rewarding experience coaching in Africa. In terms of team's performance, without doubt, it would be helping Kenya qualify for AfroBasket for the first time in 28 years.
Yeah, and what was the hardest thing?
The failures. I think I've had a few of them, but they've been very humbling experiences, and we often learn a lot more from our failures than we do our successes. In 2017, I failed to qualify the Zambian men's national team for AfroBasket, and I came home back to Australia feeling pretty disappointed and despondent, and it really forced me to have a look at myself and my role in that failure, and I managed to turn that into a positive and looked at myself and said, where can I get better? And that inspired me to, you know, branch out in terms of basketball analytics, film analysis, and gaining those skills and reaching out to mentors. And without that failure, I definitely wouldn't be where I am now, because that spurred me to get better as a coach.
You actually started your basketball journey in Africa from Zambia. What can you tell us about that?
I'm forever grateful for my experience in Zambia, because that really launched my career in Africa. I remember a friend of mine said, oh, Liz, come and watch the preseason opening tournament of the men's league. And I was like, sure, I've got nothing else to do. And so I went in and had a look at the teams. And I always avoid working with like the top ranked teams, because I'm like, oh, they've got all the talent. Where's the challenge? It's the Australian within me. We're all about being the underdog. And so I approached one of the middle tier teams and I said, could I run a practice session? And they kind of looked at me and were like, only because you're Australian and we know that Australians are good at basketball, we'll give you an hour. And so, yeah, there I was. I walked into their first practice and they're probably thinking, who is this person and why is she here? And I ended up running that entire practice and stayed for the entire week and jumped onto that team as their head coach. And we went on to win the championship that year. And still, that's one of my proudest moments, working with that team. And it was the reason why I ended up, you know, coaching in Zambia for so long. I was there for 7 years almost.
What was the first reaction of the players when they saw you in the first practice?
Yeah, well, I think they were kind of like, look, there's a lot of foreign coaches in Africa. So it wasn't really, oh, okay, who is this person? It was more that obviously I was a woman, and there's not many men who have had experiences of being coached by women. So obviously they were a little bit weary. But then, you know, as soon as practice started and I was, you know, ordering them around and running drills and working them hard, they were like, oh, this is exactly like a coach would be like. And so for them, they adapted really quickly and they embraced me really quickly. And I think working with those teams really helped me on my journey to work with other teams who, once they saw, oh, well, if these guys can be coached by her, there's no reason why I can't be.
Okay, so we should go back to the story about the Afrobasket and the road to the Afrobasket. What was the biggest challenge for you there, except the fact that you have a chance to write the history?
I think for us, look, Kenya hadn't had any experience at that level in decades. So it was a journey that they started 2 years ago with FIBA AfroCan, which is a domestic-based national team competition. And they had been building up from that. And it was just about changing the mindset of this team to be able to prepare for a more competitive international tournament with teams that they would never have competed against. And preparation, I'm one of those people who are over-prepared. And so it was about teaching them the different ways of preparing for a tournament like this: film analysis, scouting, advanced statistics, running set offenses and defenses. So these were new concepts for them, and introducing a playbook, for example. And so we only had 2 weeks, and it was just about making sure that it wasn't information overload, and that I respected what they had already done leading up to this, and making sure that, you know, we still were true to the Kenyan way of playing basketball. And when we got to Cameroon, we had a couple of challenges in regards to accommodation and COVID-19, but we were able to stay locked in. And this team had an amazing sense of self-belief, and I think that was really the differentiation for us.
Okay, how can you describe African basketball to Serbian crowd, and what was so specific about the game against Angola?
Well, for those who haven't seen African basketball, it's definitely a different style from what you would see in Europe. It's a lot more physical, and players are obviously a lot more athletic. There's a lot more raw skill because they haven't had the opportunity to develop their skills at a young age. A lot of these players come to basketball, 15, 16, 17. And so they're a little bit more raw. The game's a lot more physical. But the top teams, we're talking like Tunisia, Angola, Senegal, these teams are able to run sets and execute offenses and defenses. They're definitely playing a lot more tactical game. And Serbia played Angola at the World Cup in 2019. And so I hope they were able to see that kind of African play. Obviously, the best teams in Africa now are the Nigerias, the Tunisias, and no doubt, hopefully, Serbia gets to play these teams in the future. But in terms of our game against Angola to qualify, we had played Senegal the night before and had played 25 minutes of great basketball, and we were really encouraged by that performance, and we knew if we built on that, we could definitely beat Angola. I would say first and foremost, it's all about self-belief. We all woke up that morning being like, we're going to win this game. And a lot of players and coaches can understand that feeling. It's hard to explain to people who haven't played or coached. Sometimes you just know it's going to be a good day. And so for us, we felt very prepared. We felt relaxed, which is really important. We didn't feel overwhelmed by playing a powerhouse like Angola. And although we started the game off pretty slowly, we were able to change our tactics and lock down on defense, and that fed into our offense. And I think Angola, to a degree, underestimated us, considering that they had beaten Kenya soundly in the first round. They weren't prepared for this team. And, we were all very excited when that last shot went in, and qualifying after 28 years was huge, and it was exciting for sure. And because it was against Angola of all teams, that was kind of the cherry on top of the cake.
And if I'm right, Kenya had never beat Angola before, right?
No, so it was historic on a lot of levels because Kenya had never beaten a top-tier team, and Angola are 11-time Afrobasket champions. So I think there's 82 difference in rank between us and Angola. So it was very much a David and Goliath story. No one expected us to win. And like I said, we like the underdog label. We want people to overlook us, and hopefully we can cause some upsets at Afrobasket as well.
And what did you say to your team on that last timeout before the last shot?
So I called a timeout with about 5 minutes to go. We were down, I think, slightly by about 4 points. And I said, we've got them rattled. We have the momentum, keep pushing. And I said, in 5 minutes time, we're going to create history. And so it was all about keeping that momentum, keeping that confidence, and never letting that pressure off Angola, who succumbed to making a couple of mistakes. They hit a big three, and we're up by 1 with 24 seconds to go. And I think they thought they had that game wrapped up. And so for us to come down in a very relaxed manner and knowing that Tyler had the ball in his hands, we trusted him to hit that shot, and the rest is history.
And what about the African culture? And you spoke earlier about Ubuntu. What does that mean to you when we talk about that self-confidence, self-relief, and about the energy in the team?
So Ubuntu is a African proverb that means I am because we are. I can only be all I can be if you are all you can be. It's all about a team first mentality, and Kenya is very much about playing for the name on the front of the jersey, not the name on the back. And that's actually very rare in a lot of national teams where you have egos and big personalities. And these guys are willing to sacrifice whatever it takes for this team. They encourage and support each other. And you see that with how we play. You know, someone makes a mistake, it's about picking that person up and onto the next play. Someone makes a great shot, they turn around and point at the person who gave them the assist. And so it's all about team chemistry and team culture and always putting the we before the me.
So I have to ask you something about fashion detail, and it has a connection with you. What about high-heeled leather boots? Is it just a fashion moment for you, or it is a symbol or something more than that?
So this has actually been my trademark since my time in Zambia. And I was probably inspired by the female coaches of the Women's National Basketball League here in Australia, because they dressed very professionally in power suits in the 90s and early 2000s. And even when you look at the WNBA and EuroLeague women, these coaches are in suits and look very professional. And so I thought to myself, well, I want to be like that. I want to project that level of professionalism. And so I'm only 5'11", and you know all these players are 6-footers or 7-footers, so I needed to add an extra couple of inches. I don't look so small, but it's also being proud to be a woman. Often, you know, we see female coaches in a negative light, and I might be coaching men, but I'm still very proud to be a female, and so the boots are a feminine touch, to just a little reminder that yes, I'm here, and yes, I'm a woman.
How do the players address you? Is it like coach or coach Liz, and what happens if they say to you, ma'am?
Ma'am makes me feel like I should be like 80 years old or something. And so it's always coach or coach Liz. Anybody who says ma'am finds out very quickly that I don't respond to that. And if they do it again, it's either push-ups or suicides with a lot of running. And they learn very quickly not to use that. So it's coach or coach Liz.
Okay, so this interview was a big test for me because I didn't know so much details about you before the story about the Afrobasket, but now I have a few test questions for you.
Sure.
What do you know about Serbian basketball? Do you know any specific player? Do you have any favorite player from this country?
Oh, look, I'm actually a really big fan of Serbian basketball. Unfortunately, I don't get the opportunity to watch the ABA league that's out there just because it's hard to find links to watch games. A former player of mine, Landry Noko, actually plays in a team in Serbia, and I'd love to watch him play. And your national team, how you guys have developed your youth into what they are now is highly commendable. And a lot of federations should actually look at Serbia and have a look at how they've developed players and coaches and try to replicate that. You've got some great players in the NBA, obviously, and so they get a lot of the limelight. But it's definitely a country that I keep an eye on. And I actually, even though I was there to support Angola at the World Cup, I was very much excited to watch Serbia play, and was actually very disappointed to see them not perform as expected, but hopefully they can bounce back for the Olympics.
Okay, what was the most important thing that you learned from your team, and what was the most important thing that those players learned from you?
I think for me, it was definitely the power of self-belief. This is actually quite rare in a team of this standard. Kenya hadn't qualified in 28 years. They had to go through pre-qualifiers and a lot of adversity to get here, and they didn't care if they were playing Angola or Senegal or Mozambique. They just believed that they had the ability to beat anyone. This team had only been together for 2 years, and their sense of team and belief in each other was just amazing, really. It didn't happen overnight, and this is really hard to build and maintain by any team. So that was something that I learned from them, and hopefully continue to build on, and something that I can take to another team in a later stage of my career. I hope that they learn from me the value of preparation. This team had previously, like I said, not used playbooks, film analysis, scouting, or advanced stats. And so by using these different tools, they felt more prepared than ever for these qualifiers. The great thing about preparation is it fuels confidence, it trumps pressure, and it can be the difference between you and your opponents.
What do you expect from you and your team on the Afrobasket?
So for us, Afrobasket is really the first step towards competing at the 2023 World Cup African qualifiers. So we're looking at Afrobasket as a way to gain valuable experience. For us, it will be the first time competing at a major African event, and it's going to be a great opportunity for us to measure ourselves against the best teams in Africa. We are definitely not going just to participate. We're going to try and be as competitive as possible. And we also then want to use this experience to help us prepare for the World Cup qualifiers later this year.
What do you think, what is the main problem, and what is the main factor, because we don't have so much female head coaches of the men's team? Is it about federations or something else?
Oh, it's definitely about federations and having more women in decision-making roles within federations. I think we need more diversity in federations so that we can get different point of views, so that different voices can be heard. Federations need to engage and encourage more young girls and women to coach, and actually provide them with opportunities to coach. It's not enough to just talk the talk, you need to walk the walk. What are you doing to provide opportunities for your female coaches? Because like I said at the start, if I didn't have visible female coaches, I probably wouldn't have ever considered becoming a coach. And so I think we need more visible coaches out there coaching men and women's teams. And it's not only just for girls, it's also for boys. When they see that men can be coached by women, then they know that they can be coached by women, and it's not a big deal. And we need to change the narrative early. We shouldn't be saying that's a male coach, that's a female coach. It should just be that's a coach. And it all starts with providing opportunities. And then when it comes to hiring coaches, we need to base this on qualifications, experience, and skill set, with gender playing no role in the selection process.
Okay, I'm interested in a few more details about the procedure and the routines and the habits of the team after the game. The way you go in the locker room and the time when you go in. What about that? Do you get used to that, and do players get used to that?
Oh, definitely. So After a game, I usually head straight over to the media, or then I might be able to do a quick post-game chat with the team and wrap it up fairly quickly. I'm not one of those coaches who talk for like an hour after the game. I'm very short and sharp with what needs to be said. Then I leave them to, take their showers, get changed or whatever, and then I go and do the press conference. I'm always very conscious of, knocking on doors before I enter, and they're not exactly shy guys. They're not too. It's not something that anybody ever worries about. We all know where the lines are and what's appropriate and what's not. So there's never been an incident, and no one's ever really spoken about it. It's just, okay, well, this is out of the locker room. We can get dressed or we can get ready, and vice versa.
Do you have any advice for your colleagues from Serbia, to encourage them?
Oh, look, I would love to see more female coaches come out of Serbia. It's one of the powerhouses of basketball, and I think if they were a federation that really promoted women in coaching roles, administration roles, I think a lot of other federations would follow. So that would be my request to Serbian basketball is look at your women, look at ways to include them more, promote them, encourage them, and spend as much time on your women's teams that you do on your men's teams, and remember that women can be as valuable as you need them to be. And hopefully we see Serbia leading the way in Europe when it comes to gender equality.
Okay, Liz, thank you so much for this conversation. I hope that you will have a chance to come to Serbia, and I would like to be your host.
Oh, definitely. I've always wanted to go there. Unfortunately, with COVID, I can't quite get there at the moment, but hopefully later in the year, and that would be amazing.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.